So we're going to talk through some things. We're going to stretch through some things. We're going to grow through some things together. Yes, yes. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask me some questions. We're going to navigate as the Holy Spirit says to navigate. So I have some notes here, but I'm not going to promise you that we're going to follow them, okay? Because I really want you to get what it is that God sent you for, okay? So we are really going to be talking about, and if you flip through it, you're going to see banishing insecurity. You're going to see releasing perfectionism, boundaries, and healthy conflict. So we're going to be talking about banishing insecurity, releasing perfectionism, boundaries, and healthy conflict. Y'all ready? Okay. So, let's read. So the first section is banishing insecurity. And so it says that our goals are, regardless of how flawed you think that you are, you were created on purpose. God doesn't make mistakes. So regardless of how you feel about you, it's pretty important for you to tap into how he feels about you. So we're going to ask the hard question. Who's insecure? There. I want you to be honest, because you're not going to grow tonight if you lie to yourself. Okay, because it doesn't matter what you tell me, it matters what you tell yourself. And so if you are battling with insecurity, you first have to address it. We're not going to tiptoe around anything, we're going to name the thing. That's how you defeat it. If you pretend that it's something else, if you create a false narrative, you have created a new stronghold, but you've never defeated the first one. So you have to identify whatever the issue is by its name. So if you are insecure, we're going to start with that, because you have to banish insecurity. And the reason that it's important to banish insecurity is because it is an affront to God. It is an affront to God, because you are insecure about the creation that he made, which means you question the creation that he made. Have you ever considered that? Have you ever thought about that? You thought it was you. You thought it was your issue and it had nothing to do with God. But remember, everything that is not of God is in conflict or is an affront to God. Insecurity is not of God. So, we need to first address where the insecurity comes from. Does it come from what you see? Does it come from what someone has told you? Does it come from jealousy, covetousness? Does it come from the idea that you're not where you need to be yet? That you're on a clock and you're feeling like you're running out of time. And so you believe that you've been forgotten, or you're not worthy of what it is that you've prayed about, or what it is you believe that you're supposed to grow into. Those are real questions. Those are things that you need to ask yourself. Because again, we're not going to tiptoe around anything. You're going to ask the hard questions so you can give the real answers, so you can get actual breakthrough. And breakthrough is not this thing in service where we all fall out. Breakthrough is where you're breaking through to the you inside that God created. It has to start within. You're going to tear down those things that are around your heart. That's what breakthrough is. It's breaking through to you. When you think about insecurity, what are the conversations that you're having with yourself? What are the thoughts that you're allowing to dictate how you move? These are questions. I want you to write them down, because I can't answer them for you. This is a masterclass. That means that you're going to learn. That means I'm going to expect conversation from you. Because the reality of what we're doing here is to equip you for something else. It's not to hoop and holler. It's not to fall out, which I hope you do, because I love to watch that. That's great. But it's actually to equip you for what you're purposed for. And if you are going to be equipped, then you have to learn how to handle the tools. Because he's not going to give you something and just leave you with it. You have to learn how to use them, and to use them properly. And a part of that is your mind. The way that you think, the way that you talk to yourself, right? So how do y'all talk to yourselves? And be honest. Do you love on yourself? Mom does. It does. Do you do it consistently? Good. What about those of you that don't do it consistently? You have to learn it. You have to learn it because you're not always going to feel like it. It's not always going to make sense to you. Sometimes you're going to feel like the ugliest duckling. Sometimes you're going to feel like you have the least to offer. But the way that you shift your mind is by doing it with intentionality. So when you don't feel like something, you have to say something. You have to actually use the words to turn the tide. It's not going to be a feeling, it's going to be an act. If you're waiting for a feeling, you will miss the opportunity to shift into the right mindset. You have to do the act of saying the thing. You have to declare it, believe it, walk through it, and then see the result of it. You have to do the act. When we think about those things that are our flaws, they become the most important thing. We begin to idolize them. We idolize our flaws, and we don't think that. We think that we've prayed about it. We think that we're seeking God for healing so that we can have a great testimony. We think that we are trying to be like Paul and thorn on our side. That's the thing. But the reality is that you're always thinking about what you think is the flaw or the deficit in you, or you're always praying about it. It has become your idol. And that is what is feeding your insecurity, because you're constantly talking about it and you're constantly feeding it, which means it is growing. So what started small and as an opportunity for you to see God's hand in your life has become a giant and is stepping all over you. So what could have been your testimony if you had laid it where it was, instead you watered it and you tilled the ground around it and you pulled the weeds from around it so it was no longer being choked out. You have to put things in proper perspective. If God allowed it or gave it to you, it will work for your good. But if you're constantly saying, this is a problem, God, you need to handle this, you need to take this away, it becomes more important to you than living the life that he's actually called you to. He didn't tell you to focus on the flaw. He didn't tell you to focus on the deficit. He said, do what I told you to do. And I can promise you, it was not spending hours praying about something that he's already responded to. But because he didn't respond the way that you wanted to, you're upset with him. And you have allowed the insecurity to dictate how you move and how you navigate with God. I want you to turn to the activity. Keep going. It's in your, so you should have some pages for notes. I gave you some scriptures and affirmations for you to study, but there's going to be something I want you to do together. We're not going to do all the activities together, but I think that this one is important. In your notebooks, I want you to do 3 columns. There should be 3 columns. There's actually, if I'm not mistaken, they gave you a blank page. Did they give you a blank page in this one? They may not have. Okay, it's behind it. Okay. So write your 3 columns. And then I want you to get out your mirror or your camera phone, and I want you to look at yourself for 10 seconds. A good 10 seconds. I really want you to do this. I know some of you have memorized every feature on your face, but I want you to do this for me. I want you to do this for me. Because we talk about pretty and we think about what's outside, but I want to talk about what's inside of you. Okay. Y'all got it? Y'all looking at yourselves? You wrote your columns? Yeah, I like that. Are you looking? Okay, so in the first column, I want you to write the answer to the following questions. What do you love about yourself? What do you love about yourself? It could be one thing, it could be 5 things, it could be all things. But I want you to write what you love about yourself. And then I want you to write, after you do that, what's unique about you.
Same column?
Yes, same column. Yes.
Should it be like physical things, or should it be also like inner things?
Both. Both. That was a good question. So the question was, should it be physical things or is it inner things? But I want all the things. I want every part of you, every facet of you. Because I think that's what God wants. Right? Okay. He's a God of totality. He really is.
And could you repeat that second question?
What's unique about you? What's unique about you? And the last question in that column is, how have your flaws produced beauty, strength, or growth in you? How have your flaws basically produced something good? Okay. I love this. I love all the writing. I hope you guys are really being intentional about what you're writing down right now. Because as you're writing it, I want you to really lean into the idea that he wanted you to have impact. He wants you to move with intentionality, and he created you for a specific purpose. And so as you're looking over these answers, keep that in mind. Those things are not negated by your flaws or your poor decisions or things that you don't like about yourself. There's nothing about us that is bigger or more important to God than our willingness to be used by him. There's nothing more important. It's your willingness. It's not your perfectness, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit. It's your willingness. I think that something that I've learned is that we have to get rid of this idea that our personal human limitations have any power over how God can use us. God is limitless. The word says there's nothing impossible with God. That means that all things are possible in him. He's the God of possibility. So where your limitations stop, he continues. Everything is possible. Everything is possible. And so those dreams and those visions that he's given you, they're found even in these answers that you're writing. Seems simple, right? It seems simple. What do I love about myself? There's possibility in them. If you really look over your list, those lists are about possibility. The things you love about yourself, the unique things about yourself, and the things that have grown from your flaws. All of that points to the possibility of God. Have you ever considered that? It's the possibility of God. Let's do your second column. How have your insecurities kept you from showing up fully? I know. How have your insecurities kept you from showing up fully? And then after you do that, I want you to dive into why you don't believe God can use your flaws for his glory. Because the reason you don't show up is because you don't think he can use you. That's at the heart of the matter. How have your insecurities kept you from showing up fully? Why don't you believe God can use your flaws for his glory? And then the last question is, do you compare more than you congratulate others in your heart? Do you compare more than you congratulate others in your heart? I'm going to open the floor here because I want somebody to answer. What's keeping you from showing up fully? Who's willing to say it? Who's willing to be open? It's a safe space. What's keeping you from showing up fully? Nina.
Oh, one thing is that, like, when it comes to insecurities, I know, like, God's given me a vision for certain things, but I'll feel like the space is crowded, and then I'll just question, like, what I have to contribute that's going to be different or that's going to add value in comparison to, like, what's already there.
Okay. Got it. So the first thing that I would probably address in that, because you said about the space being crowded, God created space. That means he dictates what fills it. We don't. And so if he called you to the space, that means there's room for you there. Because he created that, right? Okay. And then you talked about there's other people that may be doing it, essentially. But there's only one you. There's only one you. And so even if you're showing up in the same space, feeling like the same thing, it's a whole different blueprint. Because he's dictated something different for you. But it's all a part of the greater plan. Each of us are a part of the body, and each of us has a function. And sometimes, two of us are hands. But we still do different things. We hold different things at the same time, even though it looks as though we're the same. We're all a part of the body, and we all have the function of bringing him glory. But we need both to do the thing. So you can't compare, and you can't think you have no value because God defines value, we don't. If he created you, you have inherent value. God does not waste time. If he took his time with you, you have value to him. He's never going to waste his time. Ever. And that means that when you come to the table, the value that you bring shifts the table. It shifts it. Because what you're worried about is, can you squeeze your chair in? But he's shifting the table to make you the head. Don't ever question your value. You don't define it, God does. I want the next person. Ashley, and then Nina.
I would say fear of, one, not feeling worthy, and then two, just afraid of disappointing God.
Ooh. So fear of not feeling worthy and fear of disappointing God. Okay, so that's similar to Nina's last one, not feeling worthy. But God does not make mistakes. And so if he called you, you are worthy for the call, right? And he determines that. We don't determine that because we are flawed. Nothing about us is perfect, but he is perfect, but we are being perfected. We're being perfected. And so sometimes we think that worthy is attached to being perfect, but it's not. It's attached to our malleability. And can we be willing to be perfected by God? Can we show up when it doesn't make sense? Can we trust him when he said that you're the right one for this plan? Are you worthy because you're obedient, or are you worthy because you made the decision for God? You're worthy because you're obedient. You're worthy because you're obedient. Okay, and then your next one was if you're going to disappoint God. Sure. We all have. We've all made him sad. We've all done things that have made him shake his head. But just because you disappoint God doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Just because you disappoint him or make him sad doesn't mean he won't call you again. Just because you make him sad does not mean that you weren't the right one for the plan. The reality is that our humanity is what draws other people into God's glory. Because if we weren't able to be a mirror for someone else, people couldn't relate to us and the God that we serve. You'll never disappoint him to the point where he doesn't want you. He'll never say you weren't good enough for me. If you want to be used by him and you are willing to be broken and stripped of your ego and your flesh and your expectations of yourself, you will not disappoint him. Do we make him sad sometimes? Do we disappoint him sometimes? Yes. But when you're talking about disappointing him to the point that he no longer loves you, it's not a thing. Because remember, he knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. And because he knew the things that you would do to make him sad. And even though he knew those things, the plan that he created first, he still created you for that plan, which means he equipped you for that, with the things that would make him sad. He knew them. He knew them. And he said, I still want her. I'm still going to take time on her. One more. Who else? Got it in the back.
So the first part of that thing called how are you experiencing people showing up fully? One of the speakers talked about being like the jack of all trades.
Mhm.
And I feel like I don't show up fully because I don't know like which trade I'm supposed to do. Because I feel like people will tell me like, oh, you're gifted at this, and I feel gifted at multiple things.
Sure.
And I don't know like what should I be, which one should I be going to do.
Got it.
And so I feel like that's why I can't show up fully because I feel like I'm doing too many things, but I don't feel like I'm bad at the things, so I feel like that's why I can't show up fully.
So I want to ask you, have you talked to God to tell you what you're anointed for instead of what you're just gifted for? Because I'm gifted in a lot of things. I'm not anointed for a lot. And there's a difference. You can show up and you can do a lot of things and be good at them, but what you're anointed for, you'll be great at it. Because you're anointed for it. Remember, he gives the gifts without repentance. So that can't be your barometer. Just being gifted at something, that can't be it. You have to push yourself to ask him the hard questions, because I guarantee that some of the things that you're anointed for are probably not the things that people are clapping in for you about. And remember that sometimes people will try to get you to focus on things because they don't want you to focus on that thing. And sometimes that's purposeful, and sometimes it's subconscious, because again, people are operating in their human nature. And so jealousy and covetousness, that hides in your heart. And some people don't even know that it's deep-rooted. And so they'll be clapping for you for the things that don't even matter. Just because you're gifted in it doesn't mean you need to put your hands on it. You have to ask God, what am I anointed for? Because you don't have time to waste on just gifts. Does that make sense? Except for you. Okay. I want to ask you to do this last column. Describe the woman that you believe that God has destined you to be. Describe the woman that you believe that God has destined you to be, and how she compares to who you are today. I like this. Is this you have one? Did they give you one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. I know, but I just want to make sure you have one. Okay. Who has God called you to be, and how do you compare to her today? Okay. We're not going to talk about that one, but I want you to keep that one in your pocket. That's going to be something that you're going to review. Because we're going to move into releasing perfectionism. And this flows right from that. Because it's important that you reset your mind, because you need to get to that woman. And to get there, you have to reset your mind daily. Because if you don't, you're going to remain in cycles. That means you're moving, but you're going nowhere. If you want to get to her, we have to break the cycles. So we got to release perfectionism. And to do that, we're going to review the good and the bad. And the reason that you review the good and the bad is because then you learn you have control over neither. Perfectionists think that they can control the outcome. You cannot control good or bad. And to get to the woman that God has called you to be, you have to break this cycle, which means you have to reset your mind, which means you have to release control. Right? Okay. Which is the most difficult thing to do. Because we want to control the outcome because we're afraid of disappointing God. But we've already talked about that. You don't have the power to do that. You don't have the power to do that. So, I think it's time that we address that perfectionism is an idol that you can never please. You'll never be perfect enough. You'll never be full enough. Perfectionism kills because it doesn't stop. It runs you ragged. It causes burnout. It creates deficits. Let's move to the activity. Flip through. I want you to do the self-reflection questions real quick. Is that my cookie person? Hi. How are you? Good. You guys are such sweets for you all. I mean, everybody likes sweets. I love sweets. And it's late. I like late night sweets. I like that. The reason that I'm asking you to do self-reflection and to answer these questions is because I want you to really consider who gave you the responsibility to get everything done and to get it right. Who gave you that responsibility? Why did you take that responsibility on? Why do you create a stronghold for yourself? Sometimes we think that people are against us or they're creating situations that are meant to tear us down, when in reality we put ourselves there because we thought that we had to show up for things or do things or create things or be the person for everybody. But the truth is that you were never meant to be there. Always being available or giving access to people because you want to be that shoulder or you want to create something special for people is dangerous. You create a yoke for yourself and for them. Perfectionism is a noose. It's a noose. We're going to move to the next one. Okay. Let's talk about boundaries. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about in business. All right. So we're going to do a little something. And I don't know if it's in your workbook or not, but I want you to get your phones out again because we're going to do something. and you're probably not going to want to do it. But I'm going to ask you to trust me. Okay? I'm going to ask you to trust me. I want you to delete every email, every text message, every contact that has no place within your sacred space. That's your personal space, the place where you are most free. I want you to do it. I want you to start setting the boundaries right now. Delete the emails, delete the text messages, delete the contacts. And you know what? You know what it is too. They probably popped into your mind the minute I said it. The person popped into your head, the text message popped into your head, the email popped into your head, because you know that they're not supposed to be connected to you. You know that they're not supposed to be within your circle, but you continue to give space to things because you think you're required to. The requirement is to create boundaries so that people are safe from you and themselves, because if you are not meant to be connected, that means you are a cancer. You are eating away at them, and they are eating away at you, even if you don't realize it. There are certain connections that look good on paper but make absolutely no sense in the spirit realm. They make absolutely no sense. So then why do you nurture them? You know what's in your phone right now that you have no business keeping. You know the people that you have made space for that you should not have made space for. You know the conversations that you're having that are not good for your mental health, or your emotional well-being, or your spiritual well-being. You know it. You know it. I literally did this today. I went through my phone and I started deleting. I started deleting. And did it feel funny to me? Did it make me nervous? Yes. Because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Because I don't want to not show up for people. Because I want to fulfill the thing that I said yes to. But the reality, y'all, is if you said yes to something that God said no to, you're being disobedient. If you're remaining in communion with someone who is pouring poison in your cup, you are killing yourself. Because you're willingly drinking it. Right? Because you know. It's not like you don't know. Some of us sit at tables that we know they're talking about us. Because we want to prove a point. They're not going to scare me away. They're not going to tell me what to do. I'm still going to show up and show out. Why are you giving them that? What do you have to prove to them? What bill do they pay for you? What space have they made for you? What door have they opened for you? What life have they given to you? We continue to put on a show for people that have nothing to do with what God is trying to do. We show up because we prove a point, but the only point you're proving is that you idolize them more than you trust God. You want them to post about you. You want them to say that you're friends. You want them to say that you're pretty. You want them to say, well, I tried to talk bad about her, but she just came back swinging. Who cares? Who cares? What have they done for you? Except make you go home and replay the conversation 10 times and you overthink every response that you made. What have they done for you except make you question, are you good enough to be at the table? What have they done for you except to make you question whether or not you matter in this earth? What have they done? What have they done? Sometimes we think about boundaries as hard lines. Cut them off here, cut them off here, cut them off here. And those are boundaries. But I also want you to consider that boundaries should be circular. Okay? So you're creating a sacred space for yourself. That means you're encompassing all the good things that you need. You're not just cutting off the bad things. Because again, when you're cutting things off, you're also cutting yourself off from people. But there are certain things that need to remain within your sphere of influence because they need access to you, both to learn from you, but to also water you. You have to create a sacred space with your boundaries. Your boundaries cannot always be hard. They need to encompass. Think of it as a hedge of protection. And the word talks about that. Can I have a tissue, please? It talks about the angels coming, right? But there's also people. Thank you, baby. There's people that are meant to be within your circle. And there's people meant, to be outside of it. Create your circle. Go to the activity. So in that circle, I want you to label it sacred space. Sacred space. This is your personal space. This is what's closest to you. And then I want you to label what and who you want within that circle. What and who you want within that circle. Create the space. Create the space. It's not just about cutting people off. It's about determining who has access. It goes both ways. So who needs access to you? Who needs access to you? Why do they need access to you? And why do you need access to them? It needs to be sacred. That means that there's only certain conversations that you'll allow. There's only certain activities that you'll allow. There's only certain opportunities that you'll engage in. There's only certain plans that you'll initiate through them. It has to be sacred. That means you have to have reverence for it. And I'm not saying idolize it. I'm saying understand where God wants you to be instead of you trying to tell God where you need to be. What and who should be a part of your circle? What and who should be a part of your circle? Thank you, Vic. Okay, I want to ask, what's difficult for you all about creating boundaries? What's difficult? Who's good at creating boundaries? Ooh, I like that. I like that. I want you all to tell me and to tell us how you have become a champion at creating boundaries. Devin.
I have a mother. And I love her.
Yes.
But I think when my husband and like when we decided to get married, something that our premarital counselor has really important to us was that outside of you, your spouse, and God, that's the only people that really have a seat at the table of your marriage. That's not something you discuss with other people. Because like, you know, with families, so like once you tell them about your family, or once you tell them about your spouse and something he or she did, like they don't look at them and say, you forgave, right? But the family hasn't. So having a mother-in-law, just a lot of boundaries with, but her role changed for Nick, my husband. So like, she was used to being like the only girl, and so like we just had to come down. And that's not saying we don't love her, do stuff with her, spend so much time with her, cherish those moments. We went through the book of Ruth together, because I really God had to work on me and my mother-in-law. But I had to get, we as a man, like a couple, we had to get better at setting boundaries for that, work as well.
I like that. I think that what you've realized is that boundaries are protection.
Yes. Yeah.
Boundaries are protection for you and the other person. That's good. That's good. Did I see a hand over here? No? Oh, that's just best. Okay.
I have a feeling that you have to decide that you are worthy to be, first of all, loved, and that you have to love you more than the rest of the, not just love, but hate as well. And if it's not good for you, it doesn't feel good for you, it doesn't feel good to you, it's not for you. Regardless of what it is, who it is, or whatever it is. It's not, you just have to love you more. Like when you get on an airplane and say, put your mask on first, love you first, because you teach people how to love you, how to treat you. And don't settle for things that you can't live with. Period. Like, it's not, it's just that. It's just like, you know what, I love myself too much for that today. Even if it's just a small step. This moment, right now, I love me too much. And stand on it.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
For me, it's always been, and I always tell them this too, if it doesn't bring you across happiness, joy, if it doesn't bring you peace, if it's tearing you down in any way, any single way, just no, it's not for you. That's your boundary. It doesn't bring you peace. That's it. Well, that is how God has for you. It's not bringing you peace.
I agree with that.
He has for you. It's not it.
I agree with that. I think that I want to also make a distinction that sometimes we confuse peace with comfortability. Okay? So there are going to be times that there are going to be people that bulldoze into your life and they're meant to be there. And it's going to be uncomfortable for you. It's that, and that's different. So sometimes we confuse peace and comfort. And I agree with you. Your boundary should bring you joy and happiness and all of those things. But it's not always comfortable. Okay? And you have to lean into that and learn from it. Because sometimes we have created false boundaries because we're trying to protect ourselves and not really protect the others. It has to go both ways. And you also have to understand that God needs to help you to really realize and align what your boundaries should be. Because some of us are standoffish because we're mean. We're mean. Okay? And we don't like to connect with other people because people have hurt us. And so we have taken on that spirit and it has grown into meanness. But there are people that are being sent to love you, which is why we do the circle. Because there has to be something captured within it. And it's not always comfortable. There are some people that are within my circle, they have to tell me the hard things. I don't like it all the time. But I understand that those are my people. Okay? Because I don't want to have a hardened heart. I don't want God to give me over to a reprobate mind. And that happens when there are no boundaries. When we focus more on our happiness and we pursue the things that are just to bring us happiness, we give in to sin because we are also feeding our flesh. Yes? Y'all did your circle? You did? I'm so proud. Is this good? Are y'all getting something from this tonight? Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I have one person over here. Yes? Manushka.
About the boundary question, at some point within the last couple of years, I realized I don't have to pick up the phone every single time. And that has helped me immensely. But then it had to go the other way, like if someone doesn't pick up my phone call or answer my message, then I can't be offended either. And so I learned, like, okay, I don't have the capacity to have a conversation, so I'm not going to pick up. But then I had to, like, eat that and be like, they don't have the capacity to talk to me and listen to my venting either, and I need to respect that.
You know, that's really good. And something that I have had to do in recent years is that sometimes I will have to say, do you have space for me today? Okay? And I'll tell them, I said, I need a moment. And so I give them an opportunity to respond. I don't just start flowing into that. Okay? And then I do the same for them. Like I give them the space to ask me the question, and then I respond honestly. Okay? But then there's also times that in conversations, because I am the person that responds immediately. I'll tell you, that is a thing for me. I do respond immediately to text. I do pick up my phone, and if I miss your call, I apologize. But that's my nature, right? And I've had to learn that while I don't expect it of others, I was draining myself. I do drain myself that way. But I don't have an expectation of other people to do it. So setting a boundary for myself Petra, just don't answer today. Just give yourself a breather today. That's important. But every time that you're having a conversation with someone, in fact, I did this with my mom the other day. I called her, I said, I need you to be my best friend for a second. Just listen. I don't want you to handle it. I don't want you to answer it. I just want you to, then I called you. I said, I just want you to listen to me. And so those are the types of conversations you have to do and the kinds of boundaries that you have to have within your conversations too, right? Because sometimes people will want to fix things for you. You don't need them to fix it, you need them to listen. And you have to do the same thing for other people because you have to be a good sounding board. You don't always have to share the wisdom because sometimes that's not your job. Because the wisdom that you have, while it may be right, it shouldn't come for you from them. Like it has to be different. We plant the seed, we don't always water the seed. And so when I ask my mom, when I have these conversations with her, I started with that. This is the boundary. I need this to be that. And so I would encourage you in your conversations to start them that way. Do you have space for me? And I need, and then give an opportunity for them to respond to that before you jump into it. And I'm telling you, it'll change your relationships. It'll change your relationships. Okay, let's move into healthy conflict. That's your next section. Okay, so how many know that conflict is going to happen? You can't avoid it. It's going to happen in your relationship. It's going to happen in your friendships. It's going to happen in your business relationships. It's going to happen at church. It's going to happen at your job. You cannot avoid conflict. Everybody agree? Okay, good. So the question is if you're going to be willing to work through it. Conflict and the resolution of conflict requires discipline. Conflict and the resolution of conflict requires discipline because it's not going to focus on what you agree with, and it's going to address what you don't click on. It's where there's miscommunication. Alignment and discipline are required for a mature relationship. If you avoid the hard things, you rob yourself of the ability to truly know who you are in different evolutions and who the people you're connected to are in theirs. If you avoid the hard things, you rob yourself of the ability to truly know who you are in the different evolutions of yourself and who they are in theirs. You cannot avoid the hard things. Tough conversations happen because we don't want to apologize. We don't want to seem weak. We don't want to compromise. We don't want to give in. But tough conversations are not necessarily giving in. They're giving you the opportunity to share your perspective. And the reason that that's important is because my perspective is my reality. Your perspective is your reality. And we have to break bread on that so we can both eat. If we're only talking about my perspective, then I have not cared for you in the way that I'm supposed to. We think of conflict as negative, but really it's an opportunity to stretch our minds because there's more than one answer to a problem. There's more than one answer to a problem. I tell you, it's true because even at school, they've changed math.
Oh, my Lord, come on.
Okay. It looks nothing like what we did in school.
Nothing.
And I mean nothing. My son Jackson teaches me. He's like, Mommy, that's not how it goes. Oh, but I got that answer. Think you got the same one. You got the same one. There's multiple ways to get to the answer. There's multiple solutions to a problem. If you're not willing to have the tough conversations, then that means you are not willing to grow. So if you like where you are, continue to hide. If you like where you are, continue to choose the friends that agree with you all the time. If you like where you are, continue to get mad at those who call you on your stuff. If you like it, stay. But then don't complain to God when you don't reach the results you asked him for. You have to have the tough conversations. Conflict is healthy when you're willing to have full, transparent conversations with respect. Understanding that people don't have to agree with you to come to resolution with you. We can solve a problem and not agree. We can agree to disagree. And it could be solved that way. We come to church and we expect for us all to think and do things the same way. We expect for every service to be the same. We expect for every encounter to be the same. We expect for everybody to usher the same way, play the music the same way. But it doesn't work like that. But when it doesn't, we get mad. And we have questions. They were out of order. You're laughing because you know it's right. Well, why'd they do that? Now I need to have a meeting with pastor. As a pastor's child, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. It's not worth it, okay? Because the reality is that we have to learn to work together. And other people can't fix the problems that you yourself won't address. If you can't have the conversation on your own, then you need to get somebody that can facilitate a conversation neutrally, not someone that will agree with one or the other. Which means that you then have to be willing to have a transparent conversation with somebody you probably didn't want there. So again, you have to decide, are you gonna hide or are you gonna do the work? Why do you guys run from having conflict? Answer the question. Who? Hi. Why do you run?
I don't like to apologize.
You don't like to apologize.
I do it.
Do you like it when other people apologize to you? Yeah. So we like that. We like when people acknowledge that they've hurt us and done us wrong, but we've done no one wrong. That's what it means. Because I feel you. Because I'm like that. I'm stubborn. You won't understand me today. Okay? I know that I am correct. But just because you're correct doesn't mean you're right. And sometimes you have to apologize even if you don't agree. Because again, their perception is their reality. You don't get to decide if you hurt somebody. You don't get to tell them you're not really hurt. I didn't do that, or that wasn't my intention. It wasn't my intention, I apologize. You don't decide how somebody else feels. Because you certainly don't want them doing it to you. Because I really love it when my husband apologizes to me. Oh, girl. Ooh, I just love that. Because it's like, oh, yes, I was right. Ooh. But the reality is I was correct. I wasn't right because my mentality wasn't.
So, well, hand in hand with that is pride.
Yes, it's pride. That's it. It's pride. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yes.
I would say I don't feel like I run from conflict. I feel like I always run into conflict. And
Yes.
what's irritating about that is people really got to know me. I'm one of the nicest people you would ever meet. But for some reason, I always run into conflict.
Have you defined your boundaries yet?
I'm pretty friendly, and I think that's part of the problem.
Friendly doesn't need to mean access. I'm friendly. I am. I want to be that. But that doesn't mean people have access to me. I'm not breaking bread with everybody. I'm not having in-depth conversations with people. I'm not creating spiritual soul ties with people. I'm not giving them access to my core. There's conflict because you are giving people access that they don't require. Some people are assignments for you. They're not your friends. You're having conflict because you're not passing the test. You're sharing notes. You can't share notes with everybody. You can't study with everybody. You need to pass the test. We can't slide our paper over so they can read our answers because they haven't done the work. They haven't done the work. So when you're running into that, it's because I want to be available. I want to love on you. I want to care for you. I want to be there. But if you're there for them and you're not meant to be, that means you're out of alignment for the people that you're really supposed to be there for. And so that's why there's conflict. That's why there's conflict. Because sometimes people understand us superficially, but they don't understand us here. And so when they're responding to you, they're responding to this. It's the narrative that you've given them. But you haven't really, right? They don't understand you. Very, very, very. Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah?
What you were just saying made me think about it. So what's your best advice for setting a healthy boundary without hurting the other person's feelings? Because you never, like, we don't want to hurt people, right?
Right.
But sometimes, like, that boundary just has to be set in place.
Sure.
What's your advice on how to go about doing that without hurting the relationship, hurting the individual?
First understanding that you may do it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And just being content that
So having the mindset, it may happen anyway. Because again, we don't control other people's feelings. 2, pray about what you're going to say. Because you can communicate a boundary, but you don't have to add all the fluff to it. Okay? Sometimes we over-explain things. And sometimes we don't explain enough. And so you have to pray so that God gives you the words on how to communicate the boundary. But then thirdly, you need to be consistent. People get hurt when we get wishy-washy. Because we told them something, but then we do something else. And then when we get mad at them, we reiterate the boundary we never held. You have to be consistent in your boundary. And you have to understand, you do not dictate their feelings. But because you have consulted God first and said what He's needed you to say, that He'll mend the hurt. That's Him. He's the salve. Because He knew that the wound was going to come. If you do it how He says, that He already has the response in place. Whatever that is. Whatever that is. I got time. Yep.
I avoid conversation and conflict, and I feel as though I already know what the outcome will be before the conversation. So, especially this passion spirit. So
Sure.
I've come to before, there was some resolve where I feel like I had a relationship to. And I'm like, I'm not going to be there for it, so I'll just avoid it. Or just shut down because I know this conversation you aren't going to seek to understand or listen to understand.
Sure.
And so, got it.
Okay. So we become professional mind readers. Because that's how they've reacted in the past. And it also means that we don't trust that people evolve just like we did. If you don't have the conversation, you'll never know if they've grown. And they may not have. Okay. That means you already knew. No love lost. But what if they have grown? What if you just took away the opportunity for them to have a mature conversation or relationship with you because you decided for them? Why? What does it hurt you to do that, right? Because communicating your feelings and your boundaries is important for you. Why take away something that blesses you because you know their answer? Why? Because I would want the space for someone to have given me grace that I've evolved, that I can respond better than I would have last week, or last month, or last year. I'm not the same Petra. I like to tussle, but I'm not the same Petra. You see what I mean? We have to give people the grace that we want to receive. A lot of times we want to put people in a box, but then when it comes to us, we feel a certain type of way if someone were to do that. You have to give the grace that you want to receive. And if they fail their test, they failed their test. But we don't answer for them, we answer for ourselves. And so if God has told you to communicate something, if God has told you to release something, then you are required to do that. You're not required to do anything else but what God has told you to do. Steward your relationships well. Steward your relationships well. Because it's going to matter in the end when you have to answer for them. Everything we do is a form of discipleship. Everything that we do is a form of discipleship. The conversations that we have, the conflict that we have, it's all discipleship. And can they see God in what we did? Can they see? Okay, last one.
I used to avoid conflict just due to the fact that, due to my own abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that if I used my voice without notice, I was always confident, I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I use my voice, they're going to pull all their love and they're going to be alone.
Heard. And I want to say that the love that you feel that you've lost, you're going to gain it in this room. That you're not alone in that. There's more than one person in here that suffers from that and has dealt with it silently. And if someone pulls their love away from you because you show up fully as yourself, the love was never yours. So you're protecting something you never had. You're worried about something that was never in your storehouse. If you cannot be you and show up as God has called you to show up, you were never meant for that space or that relationship. And so you lose nothing when they walk away because you didn't have it anyway. You didn't have it anyway. And once they've walked away, they've made space for the one who's meant for you. They're a placeholder. Don't give permanency to placeholders. The minute you feel that you can't show up, you need to walk. Do yourself the favor. Remember, you were created with value. You have to show people that you value yourself. Because they won't do it. They're not going to do that. They're going to do whatever you let them do. Right? Walk away. Walk away. Walk away. Yes? I think have I answered all the questions? I'm so excited you guys spent time with me tonight. Did you guys have a good time?
Yes.
Was it worth it to stay a little longer?
Yes.
I'm hungry. Have you guys been having a good time this weekend?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I'm so happy.
Awesome.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I have definitely been praying over you all in our time tonight because I wanted to make sure that we're learning together. I'm not trying to preach at you. I really wanted to really sit with you in this space, and I hope that it was beneficial for you and that you are able to gather. I do. And that you could take something home. So all of your assignments, go back over them, reread them, do the work of them over and over again until they stick with you. This is not a one-time thing. Growth is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time thing. There's more for you and there's more to you. There's more for you and there's more to you. And so I want you to know that you're valued. I want you to know that, and that I value you and your time with me tonight. Thank you all so much.